All set?
Yep.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Environmental Lands Acquisition Selection Committee. It is 6 p.m. on November 19th, 2020. We are going to now call the roll.
Ms. Eva Bailey? Here yet. Mr. Mac Davis?
Here.
Ms. Patty Fesmire? Ms. Sharon Hannah West?
Here.
Ms. Janice Howie?
Here.
Mr. Clark Hall Jr.? Ms. Mona Neville?
Here.
Dr. Chris Miller? Mr. Josh McCart?
Here.
And acting chair, Ms. Joanne Hurley.
Here. Thank you so much. If you're in the audience and I don't see many people here, please silence or mute all your personal communication devices. It is now time for public comment. Even though there's no one in the audience, there may be someone remotely. Are there any citizens wishing to comment on any proposition coming before the Environmental Lands Acquisition Selection Committee during the public comment period?
There is no one at this time.
There is no one at this time. We'll continue with our announcements. Does staff have any announcements? No announcements tonight. We may begin our old business then. The approval of the September 2020 minutes will be in at a later date. Next on the agenda is the meeting calendar for 2021. Every member of the committee should have been provided with a copy of the meeting calendar for 2021. If you have not, please contact Tammy. It is now time for our acquisition update, and do we want to wait on that for a few minutes, or should we begin that?
Can I ask about the calendar? It says 2020.
Up at the top, 2021?
Yeah, but all the dates say 20. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't old or.
Scrivener's error. Yes,
Okay.
it should be.
All right. I just wanted to, because I saw that email too, and I was like, oh, I better do the third Wednesday.
Thank you for that correction. We are awaiting one committee member to be here so we can commence with the regular business. So we'll take a very short break right now until that committee member arrives.
Ms. Hurley, can I note the proof of publication while we're at it?
Yes, ma'am.
The items were published in the Tampa Bay Times on November 8th, 2020.
Thank you.
And Chris Miller is.
I just spoke with Patty Fesmire, and she's about to sign on to WebEx. And Clark Hall just logged in.
On the calendar again, it says third Wednesday, and it looks like the dates are Thursdays.
January 21st is, but March should be Wednesday.
So that's correct. So the first Thursday in January is a Thursday, and then all the others are Wednesdays.
Okay.
It's when there was availability for this room.
Okay. I just.
No, good catch.
And just so you know, I'm pretty sure even though it says 2020 on there, the dates do match the days, just the year's not right.
5 minutes. Okay, do you mind if we do acquisition update and management update on here? Okay, all right, we'll start doing that. Okay, we're good for the acquisition and management update. Okay, so I'm going to begin the acquisition update then. Let me share my screen. Okay, so we have a few updates here since last time. We're still in active negotiation for the David Curry Living Trust property. We've been negotiating for quite some time. Hopefully we'll be bringing it to a close shortly. This property is sandwiched right in between our Blackwell property here, which we're also negotiating, which is located down here. You can see here it is 58 acres. The Blackwell property, we're also still in negotiation on this. This again has 2 different parcels here which straddle Perrine Ranch Road, and it is approximately 167 acres. So again, still in active negotiation for that one. And again, it's located down there. So we brought a new sale and purchase agreement to the Board of County Commissioners for our Gulf Harbors property, which was approved. So now we're working on the closing for this property. This property is a little bit different than most of our properties, I'll say. We've been in closing on this for quite some time. We faced some litigation with this property. So right now, in order to close, it's in the seller's hands. So the seller needs to do a few things to prove that they remediated the property. The property, as I think we've updated you, was found to have be heavily laden with arsenic and some other issues. It was a former golf course, so that was really no big surprise. But so they needed to remediate it. Now they need to do a couple of other things before we can close, and they need to run that by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Once we have the okay with FDEP, we'll proceed with the closing. In the meantime, the county is doing their due diligence, looking at the title work. So we're hoping we'll close on that soon, but it really depends on how long that process with the DEP takes.
And what do the residents of Gulf Harbors, what will their responsibilities be? Will they pay?
So that's yet to be determined. That's yet to be determined. The sale and purchase agreement that we took to the board had ELAMP paying the full amount. We are hoping and striving to bring a MSBU ordinance to the board to have half of the property to be paid through that MSBU by those citizens. It's a process that we're moving through. We hope to be doing that soon. And the idea with Gulf Harbors is, so this, you can see here, this outlined in red, and this line might move a little bit, but the idea is to have the conservation land be right in the center, and then to do a more passive park idea around here with maybe a trail or a dog park. If we were to do the MSBU without getting into a lot of details, we'd have an advisory board committee that we'd need to bring to the board, and they would be in charge of determining what would be on this outside portion of the donut here, but this inside will remain conservation land.
And it will only be available to the Gulf Harbors residents.
So again, yet to be determined. It depends on, as it is right now, the ELAMP land, the way we had it written, would be available to ELAMP guests as well.
Pardon, what did you say?
ELAMP guests.
Okay.
But this park around here, depending upon how it's eventually funded, is going to determine whether or not it will be public or it will just be for the Gulf Harbors residents. So really the funding source is going to be a big determination. And again, we're really hoping to move that to an MSBU in the near future. So that's where Gulf Harbors is located. We added, per our meeting in September, we added the Sanctuary Farms property to the acquisition list. That was brought that this week? It was this week. So Tuesday, we brought that to the board to be added to the acquisition list. So as a reminder, that was about 515 acres. And the other property that we brought this past Tuesday was the Wood property. As you recall, this is in our Cypress Creek corridor, and that was also added to the acquisition list. So our next steps with those are to go out to bid a solicitation for bids for appraisals. And after we have those, then we'll be moving forward with the negotiations on those properties.
Hi, this is Sharon Hanna-West. I had a question on Gulf Harbor. Would the designation of the park around it require a barrier to preserve the land? And if that's the case, would that be paid for? And then if it's not the case, would that change the scoring on the property, with a large amount of public access to that piece?
Not quite sure I understand your question, Sharon. Could you say that one more time?
Okay. My question was the designation of the surrounding park around the Gulf Harbor piece. Is that going to change the preservation aspect of that piece? Would it change the scoring of the property if public access was allowed, around the perimeter? I just had a question on that, on how that would, affect the way we evaluated that property initially when we decided to add it to the acquisition list.
Sure, I understand your question now. So because the reason why we separated the two areas out is because the area in the middle is the environmentally sensitive area. The area around the outside is not as much. So I think, and I wasn't actually in this position when they went out there, but it's the area in the middle that's environmentally sensitive, and that's the area I believe that is most sensitive for our purposes, which is why we were okay doing that outside area. But to answer your question, I'm not completely sure if that would change. I don't think that would change the zoning or anything like that.
The scoring of the property, the way the scientific committee scored it.
Right. I don't know. Do you know the answer to that?
In addition to that, because ELAMP is allowed to have some passive recreation on their properties, I don't think that necessarily would have changed the score of the property, because the possibility has always been there for some sort of light passive recreation to occur on the ELAMP property.
I understand that. Is a dog park considered light or passive recreation? Because we usually attach that, we have in a couple of properties attached that, when we send it forward.
Correct. But I think in this situation on this property, like Tammy says, the locations or the sections of this property that have been primarily utilized by wildlife and things like that, those are the ones that we want to make sure we focus on. And then the other sections that maybe had already some amenities just because it was previously a golf course, and those have had some impacts already.
That's true.
Those were the ones that I think we said, well, since they've been somewhat impacted, maybe that's what can be used for some sort of maybe higher recreation. We don't know what the recreation components will be until it's determined if there's going to be MMSBU and the committee decides what type of activities are going to be in that park amenity area. So and I understand that. I'm just curious as to why this wasn't brought up when we initially considered it.
So I'm not sure that it wasn't, honestly. I wasn't here at that time, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure if the way that it was presented as that being an option. I don't know. I can look back and look though, because I do think that that's a valid point.
Am I live? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, I was here when all this went on, and we might want to call this the Ken Tracy Memorial Property, because it was voted against until he made a very impassioned plea for and the interior part as a bird sanctuary. And I think that if there's any way we can get out of buying this property, we should explore that. And if the citizens of Gulf Harbor want to keep it's not going to be developable for anything else. It's pretty much wetlands and transitory and migratory fowl that I would like to be on the record as I voted against it and lobbied against it. And I'm still think this is a really poor example of using our money for principally the benefit of a closed community, because I don't know what the final access that the general public will be given to this area, but I know there was extreme resistance among the residents to allowing anything wider than a footpath through there. So that's all I got to say about it. It's a bad idea. We're trying to put lipstick on a pig here.
Tammy, when was this initially brought before the committee?
I think 2016, if
All right.
not before then, actually.
All right.
I know that Keith had been working on this property since about 2012.
Wow.
So I know it's been in the works for a long time. It's been contentious the entire time. You know, as you know, ELASC did recommend to get put on the acquisition list. The board did recommend purchasing it and did approve the sale and purchase agreement. So one thing to consider is that if we do go through with the MSBU, we would be creating an advisory committee, at which time we would have people that have interests that live in the community and probably a staff member of ELAMP as well as the parks be on that advisory committee. So we would absolutely raise the concerns, to Sharon's point, about making sure that it stay environmentally sensitive. Yep.
And just to say, not to disagree or anything, but I didn't see it as such a big, because it was, according to Ken and a lot of other avid birders, that it was heavily used by birds. It's a, you know, there's not a lot of people out there because it is so wet. It is heavily used by birds, and it's a pretty good spot for them to rest and feed. And there aren't many of those without a lot of humans. So I was one that I wasn't 100% behind it, but I was one that voted to pass it on because it, and what Ken said, I think, was very important.
Okay.
Tammy, could I make a suggestion? Tammy, over here. Could I just make a suggestion? Right. Being that I'm from the county attorney's office, I know this is a sensitive matter. I know about the ongoing litigation. I think maybe it might be best if you have the attorney handling the litigation come and do some sort of presentation or informational or Q&A to the extent that she can comment on the specifics. I think it would put some things in perspective because, you know, the board has already made decisions. So it'd be helpful to have those explained as to why they were and the status of the litigation so you understand. It's just my suggestion, being the outsider sitting here.
And I would ask that if committee members are interested in having a presentation by the county attorney, please let Mrs. O'Dara know.
Thank you.
So is there still going to be a cost to the individual residents? And
that is yet to be determined.
Okay.
That if we go through with an MSBU, then yes. But I like that idea, Elizabeth.
Are there any other acquisitions that you wish to report on?
No.
All right, we'll move on now to the management update.
So Matt,
I'm back. Hello, everybody.
Welcome, and also we'd like the record to show that Eva Bailey is present too.
And then Ms. Pressmeyer is on as well.
All right, the management update, please.
Matt, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Hello. All right. My name is Matt Hunsinger. I'm the land manager for the ELAM program. Just wanted to go over some ELAM management updates from September through